Sometimes the difference between life and death is whether someone intervenes for you. The Crooked Man tells a story of two men with the same wounds, and how intervention can arrive just in time for one, but too late for another. This video will contain themes of self-exit. Please prioritize your well-being. When David moves into his new apartment, the hauntings draw him into someone else's life. David finds scraps from a notebook containing the anguished thoughts of the mysterious previous tenant, and clues with addresses on them which lead David to journey to an empty hotel, a closed law school, an abandoned hospital, and finally a house, the family residence of Duke McGahan. On this journey, David comes to understand that Duke was a man in terrible pain, which slowly eroded away at him, and in each location he learns that Duke experienced a breakup that left him despondent, a failed dream of becoming a lawyer, a mother he could only watch decline in a hospital bed. Scattered through this game are many notes detailing Duke's desolation. David is very much like Duke, only earlier in the cycle. He was left by his partner Shirley for lacking a backbone. He lied about being colorblind to get into flight school, and in a moment of anger, buried under the pressure of caring for his ill mother, he strangled her before she was subsequently diagnosed with a brain tumor. He too feels defective, like an imposter, like he has abandoned his mother. He shares in a very similar pain as Duke. David admits to his best friend Paul that every time he was sad, something whispered to him, and if he acknowledged it, he was done for. The Crooked Man appears to be more than a manifestation of Duke's hatred. In the hospital, we find a suicide note from a patient named John Smith, who warns the psychiatrist of this monster. And the psychiatrist who treated him hangs himself soon after. Duke's Crooked Man has blacked out eyes and a grotesquely twisted neck. And when Paul confronts David, he sees something on him, a shadow helping David hold the gun to his own head. The Crooked Man is both an entity that hunts the vulnerable and a shadow that manifests from within. As David follows Duke's trail, he encounters fragments of him. In the hotel, David meets Sissy, who represents Duke's heartbreak, but wants to hold on to the memories. In the law school, he meets Dee, who represents Duke's ambitions that failed, but still continues to dream. And in the hospital, David meets Fluffy, a child waiting for a mother who never returns, representing Duke's own feelings of abandoning his mother who died in this hospital. And David does something for Duke's fragmented wounds. He meets each of their pain. He reassures Sissy that feeling deeply isn't a weakness. He tells Dee that life isn't over just because a dream collapses. He protects an alone Fluffy from the monster stalking him and from being alone in this hospital. By relating to them and helping them, David symbolically intervenes for every piece of Duke's fragments, and each time he personally comes to terms with a similar pain within himself. This game actually signals intervention through its mechanic of bad endings. If David tells Sissy not to cry, she smashes the precious memory box and is killed by the Crooked Man. If he tells Dee not to give up on his dreams, Dee stabs him, is then killed by the Crooked Man, and David is blamed for it all. If he fails to protect Fluffy from the Crooked Man, he gets shot and the child dies in the crossfire. We come to learn that each person requires a personalized intervention, be it the right tenderness, or the right response, or the right timing. And this becomes pronounced when it's time for David's intervention. When David is on the precipice, Paul punches him, again and again, screaming for the monster to let go of his friend. It's desperate and it's frantic, but this does interrupt David. And his bad endings demonstrate this. If Paul tries to persuade him, David shoots himself. And if Paul wrestles for the gun, then they both die. David's personal intervention was Paul, physically fighting for his friend's life. Paul helps him understand that he and Duke are similar, that Duke's monster hates him, but his fragments were seeking his help. David deepens this understanding by explaining that this relationship is symbiotic. He wasn't only helping Duke, but Duke was saving him back. David finally defeats the Crooked Man, and as he is banished, light enters Duke's house. When David finally finds Duke, he is already bones. He acknowledges Duke's hatred, his pain, his help. He buries Duke, leaving a pack of cigarettes at his grave. While Duke never received intervention in his life, David does meet each of his fragments in exactly the right way, allowing Duke to finally rest. If you go back for a second playthrough, you can meet Duke before he dies. You can speak to him, tell him his life wasn't empty. Duke agrees there were good things, but that he couldn't see them anymore. David tells Duke that meeting him had saved him. Duke asks him to leave, thanks him for being here, and dies all the same. So even though David gets to meet and reason with Duke, even though we can save fragments of him, we cannot save Duke himself. His intervention still arrived too late. Duke and David were two sides of the same coin. David's life is still painful, but he isn't alone. David survived because he had Paul. Duke did not have a Paul. Even though it was too late for Duke in life, it wasn't too late to see him and honor him in death.